We are born free.
And we will die free.
The time in between, though,
that's complicated.
In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Odermatt.
Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty podcast, and got a great show lined up for you guys today. Before I get to introducing my guest, I just want to tell you about a couple things going on here at Lions of Liberty. As you know, we had the changes with ownership structure at Lions of Liberty with Mark Claire moving on, as you heard in the ad at the top of today's show for Mark's new show. So check that out. And Brian and I taking over Lions of Liberty. And, one thing we really want to focus on is the Lions of Liberty Pride, expanding that. And one thing we're doing right now, at least through the end of the year, it'll probably end around the end of the year, maybe the beginning of 2023. But if you join on an annual membership for Patreon, so if you join and you pay a full year, you're going to get 15% off. That's double what we normally give for an annual membership. That also works for upgrades too. So if you're a current Pride member, you can upgrade, or if you're not a Pride member, you can join an annual membership and save 15%. This works for any level, from $5 all the way up to $50. So check that out. And with that said, also I do want to talk about some things we have going on at the Lions of Liberty store. If you don't know, we have a store where we sell a bunch of Liberty-related merchandise, Lions of Liberty branded merchandise. We actually have at the top of it, if you go to lionsofliberty.store, we have a holiday section at the top where we have some beanies. We have our taxation, or merry taxation is death mug. We got a new Die Hard. People argue, is Die Hard a Christmas movie or not? We have a new Die Hard t-shirt design, so check that out. And of course, we have everything else that we normally have at the Lions of Liberty store. So check that out. And if you join the Pride, of course, you do get a discount on items in the store. And I think I forgot to say, but if you don't know, you can join the Pride by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. Let's get into today's show. All right, I am live to the Lions of Liberty Pride and joined here today by my guest, Kate Dinda, also known as Mayor Kate. She ran for mayor as a Libertarian in a very small town in Pennsylvania and won. And her election, her ability to be mayor, is being challenged due to her criminal background. She is a felon. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what it's like to run for mayor as a Libertarian and how she became a Libertarian. So Kate, welcome to Finding Freedom.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Good to have you here. And, there's a lot to talk about. Your story is pretty complicated. It's been written up by Tim Cass, and I've heard you also interviewed on Cal Matovic's show in Liberty and Health. And there's also, a good deal of tragedy in your story, which we'll talk about as well. But before we get into that, I like to talk with my guests who are Libertarians about how they became Libertarians. So I think that's a pretty good starting point. So how did you find liberty?
I think it was a long process, and it just kind of all the events that have happened in my life kind of built on top of each other led me to figuring out, this is what all of my beliefs actually align with. So I guess really the main part where I started questioning the government and really the motivations behind a lot of those things was I was married to a Marine. he was a machine gunner and he was deployed to Afghanistan and all that. And he came home from deployment a very changed person. And a few years later, he took his own life. He committed suicide. And that's when I really realized, like, that all of these wars, like, that's where, like, the whole anti-war thing, like, really, like, lit a fire inside of me. Like, I never really, everything's so, like, glamorized and glorified, like, oh, go be a hero and all of this. And then you realize, like, what they're actually over there doing. And, like, when he came home and was telling me, like, oh, I'm guarding poppy fields and all this stuff, and it's like, wait a minute, what's really going on over there? And then you dig a little deeper and find out, we're just going to all these countries, invading their lands, killing tons of people over what, like, some resources that we need or something, like, or just so that led me down that path. And
so what was your like political ideology before that?
I guess I always thought I was like a conservative or like more right leaning. I always believed the government needed to be small. I don't know, but like I didn't agree with like some aspects of it. Like, I guess I'm not, I don't know, like, I don't want to like force everybody to agree like I do. It wasn't like that. I don't know.
Right.
I'm like drawing a blank here. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. That makes sense.
It's like so hard to put into words. Like there's so much. Like.
Yeah. So I think the place to go logically. I mean, you talked about all of these things that happen in your life, this tragedy that you experienced, kind of led you down this path. So let's talk about that. You talked about your husband who served overseas and then ended up committing suicide. And then I think, if I'm remembering correctly, immediately after that, you experienced another really tragic event.
Yeah, so it was the night of his funeral that I was in a car accident where I struck a pedestrian and two pedestrians, and one of them died and the other was severely injured. So then, like after that, then I was incarcerated. So I was incarcerated for 19 and a half months and went through this very lengthy case. Like it was like 7 years, I think, before I was actually sentenced. And I had, and me and my husband had a son at the time. We have a 3-year-old. He was 3 years old at the time. So like he just lost his father. I was just in this car accident. Now I'm in jail, and it was like everything was just upside down. And so obviously losing my husband led me down the anti-war path, and then going through the criminal justice system, where it was something that I never like tried to like deny that happened or anything, like from the get, I'm just like, okay, like what, I'll just serve my time. We'll just, I never like tried to really fight it or anything. But I was just amazed at how crazy the system worked. Like once I was in there, like seeing people in and out and the crimes that people were coming in for, like most of them were just, drug addicts that would relapse on probation or something. And I watched a girl go to state prison for stealing a $1.99 chicken salad sandwich, like just the craziest sentences that didn't make any sense. Then there'd be someone in there for like, child abuse, and they only served like 3 months. Like none of it made any sense. It was just in the people that were coming in and out for like addiction, like they weren't getting any help. They're just like locked up, and then they were sick, and then they'd go out, and a lot of the girls would, go back out and end up dying from a drug overdose or something insane. And it's like, this system is not helping anyone. Like it's hurting more people than it's actually helping. And then when you have like in my case, where I just wanted to like take a plea guilty, be done with it. Like for that to take 7 years is insane to me. Like, there, like you would think it would be like, okay, just let her do her time, get it over
So
with. But
what was the reasoning for that? Like when it was happening? So you're in jail for 19 months when this is all ongoing. Like did you have the, I guess you had the ability to post bail? What was there, a bail set, or how did that work out?
my bail was set at 50,000 cash only.
Wow.
So then after the 19 and a half months, we had a bail reduction hearing, and they lowered it down to like 30,000 with a bond plus 5,000 cash. And I had no prior criminal record. Like, I didn't have a speeding ticket. So it's not like I was this like habitual offender or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a child, so like I'm not a flight risk, but they eventually lowered it, and then I was able to post bail. So that's whenever I got out after the 19 and a half months. And then after that, it was like just years and years and years of the lawyers going back and forth, and me kind of just not even knowing really what was going on, because they never offered me a plea or anything. So my lawyer, I guess, just, I don't know, argued a bunch of things back and forth, and it did end up going to the Supreme Court, and like some evidence was thrown out and stuff like that, which then, once, like every time you file to go to the next court, it's like 2 years before you hear back. So you have to go through like the appellate, and then the superior, then the Supreme
Mm-hmm.
Court, and all that. And so finally, like, all this evidence was thrown out or whatever, and then they offered me a plea, and I was like, yes, I'll just immediately, like, I'll take this plea. It was the first time they'd offered me a plea, and that was, 7 years later.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, and my plea ended up being like time served. So I got my 19 and a half months time served, and then probation after that. But it was just like so many years of my life. And because of that, like, because I was incarcerated and then out, during the time I was incarcerated, my son had to go and live with his grandparents. And then whenever I got out, I still like couldn't get custody back of him because I still wasn't sentenced. So then got put into like this 7-year long custody battle trying to like,
Wow.
get custody back of my son. And I'm like, this poor boy just lost his father, and then me to jail, immediately after. And then I just, like, so that's another aspect. It's like the family court system is absolutely absurd too. And it's like, so I just saw like all these different angles of the government, and it's like, I don't think I had any choice but to become a libertarian after that,
Mm-hmm.
because you just see the flaws and the faults, and like there just has to be a better way to resolve a lot of these issues.
Yeah, and not only did did it change your politics or change your philosophy, but you decided to run for mayor. And so while this case was still going on before you got sentenced, right? You started your run for mayor, right?
Yeah. Yes. I don't know. I felt like I needed to do something like I wanted to do something positive with my life. I didn't want this horrible accident to, I don't know, to be like, okay, well, I don't know, because a lot of people, once they have like this felony on their record, they're just like, oh well, I'm a felon now, I'm this, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to do something like for other people, like for my community, for my town, to just, I don't know, like like redeem myself in a way, or like do, I don't know, I just felt this need to like repay my debt to society in another way, because like I don't feel like me serving time in jail or this or that, like I don't feel like that's like how you actually repay these things. And that's what like our criminal justice system could really like benefit from, like what is it, Free the People? They did that documentary about restorative justice. So like that kind of thing it's like so amazing to me, that like that I feel like that would be a much better solution. Like, go out and actually help your community and improve it and do things to, I guess, not make up for it, because there's not really anything I could ever do to like make up for what happened, but I
Yeah,
saw
no,
a
but I
need.
mean, I get what you're saying, and I mean, I talk about this a lot with my guests that like the system is so broken in so many ways, and like really a real tragedy in this broken system is that it prevents a lot of people from, like you were just talking about, being able to add value to society. And being able to add value, that's of course good for society to get value, but it's also good for the people who are trying to redeem themselves, who are trying to trying to maybe change in some cases. If you have that block in place where you're not allowing them to add value, not only is it hurting the world, it's also hurting that individual as well, and probably is going to make them more likely maybe to do something else because they're frustrated and they're beaten down. But I wanted to focus in on the town you live in, so the town that you ran for mayor, just to give people an idea of the size of it, how many people live in that area.
It's a very small town. I think there's maybe like 600 people in the whole town. Um, but everyone likes to be left alone. It's very conservative leaning, so very Republican area. But I say they're just libertarians. They just don't know it yet because they really
Mm-hmm.
just they move here to be left alone. And like everybody, like I mean, I wasn't the only. My husband was elected as a libertarian as well, but he also has a criminal record, so he wasn't allowed to serve either. His is
Oh wow! So
his is
so
like
is he also fighting it too?
no, he's not. Just because if my case changes it, like we asked our lawyer and he thought my case would be a better one to argue this for, because if like my case, if we get a ruling in our favor, then it will basically open the doors for all felons to then hold office or run for office. Like if they get elected, actually be able to serve
Mm-hmm.
um, across Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
it really didn't matter which one of us fought. We just went with our lawyer's advice that it would be my case. Um,
And I want to come back and we'll talk more about the case specifically. But
mhm.
first, I kind of want to talk about while we're talking about the town that you're in, and I wanted to really ask about campaigning. Because you beat an incumbent mayor, right? Or so what was that like? What were some of your tactics on being able to talk to people and get your name out there? Yeah, just talk about how you pulled that off.
I think like getting involved in your community, like volunteering in any kind of ways like that, is a huge is a great way to like get to know people. And my approach was a little bit different. So like instead of saying, "Oh, like here's what I'm gonna do for you," I was like, what do the people of this town want?" And I feel like that's a question a lot of politicians like aren't asking. They're telling you what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm gonna do this or this. But I was like, well, what do you guys want to see happen in Austin? What do you guys like? What do you think our biggest issues are here? We haven't uh, had much, I don't know, guidance or whatever. Like our borough council, they're kind of just a small town borough council that doesn't really do much. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever me and my husband were elected and we got in there, we really we were live streaming the meetings. We were getting our community involved. I volunteer at the food bank, so I got to talk to basically everyone in the town, and see what their needs are, what needs addressed. And it's usually just little things like the potholes in the roads, or like property
Yeah.
taxes, or things like that. And a lot of the things that the ideas of libertarianism appealed to them because they all, like I said, they all want to be left alone. That we don't have code enforcement here. We don't have a lot of things like that. I mean, we have ordinances, but we don't have cops. And what do you know? We have low crime. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
crazy happens here. So it's pretty much already a very libertarian society. I just don't think they had heard that terminology before. Like they just never heard that philosophy.
Right. Yeah. Most people haven't. I mean, they've heard the word and they just think like, oh, those are crazy hippies or something.
Right.
But so I'm curious also when you were talking to people and, you're your felony came up, or I guess at that time, I guess it wasn't a felony because you hadn't been sentenced yet. But when when the the accident came up, how did you approach that?
Like, since it's such a small area, and this isn't my husband's hometown, but I'm only from, like, 10 minutes away, so everybody knows everybody in this area. They were all familiar with what happened. I had been living over here at the time of the accident, so they already knew. And the response that I got from, like, all of the constituents was just that, well, you already, like, did your time. You're like, that's not who you are. That's just something that happened in your life. And, like, things like I didn't really have any negative feedback, at least not to my face, but everyone was very supportive. And then even after the fact, like, when I went to go vote the other, at this last election, everyone was like, hey, are you going to run for mayor again? Like, are you going to run for office again at the next election? And if we just keep electing you, like, they can't just keep removing you, right? I'm like, I don't know, maybe. Like,
So
but yeah, I had a ton of support. But like I said, everybody already pretty much knew,
yeah, well, that's awesome. You had support, and I mean that makes sense. Being in a small town, people know you for who you are. So that's that's a good thing that people were able to look at your character, and instead of looking at maybe things that had happened in the past. So the actual case against you, I guess is it a case? I don't know what it is. They're trying to file to get you. The DA is trying to get you to not be mayor, right? So how did that process work? How were you notified of it? Were you? There's a lot of questions here, so you can take one at a time. Were you aware that this was something that could happen when you ran for mayor?
No, I wasn't. Like, I just did, like, a quick Google search, like, can felons run for office or whatever, and it was like, oh yeah, you can run. And I didn't put in, like, state specific though, because I was like, okay, well, Google says yeah, but apparently, like, in the Pennsylvania Constitution, there's some kind of stipulation, but even in the crimes laid out there, it's not clear. And then it's like case law that has determined this, so it's like, just somebody's interpretation of words written on paper 200 years ago. But so no, I didn't know at the time. Sorry, you threw a lot of questions.
Yeah, I actually like 5 questions. So yeah, so you didn't know at the time, and then so when were you notified? Like I think like they wouldn't swear you in, right? And then you were still able to kind of go around that process and get sworn in?
Yeah. So, it was like the first borough council meeting where I was, supposed to start or whatever, be sworn in. And I went there, and, the DA had only called me like 2 days prior. And he was just basically called me and said, like, hey, will you resign? And I was like, well, no, why? Like, and he's like, well, it's come to my attention, that you have this felony on your record, and I don't think that you're eligible to serve as mayor. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna call a lawyer and get an opinion, and see what's what. And then when I went to that meeting, they basically just refused to allow me to swear in. And then even afterwards, when I found out that they still had to swear me in, that there's a whole process they'd have to go through to remove me. So I tried to go down and have, like, the secretary swear me in, and she tried to say, oh, well, you can only be sworn in at a meeting. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not right either. Like, they were just trying to say all this stuff. And then they rescheduled the next meeting so that it would be past 30 days. Because if the seat is vacant for 30 days, then it's like I would automatically forfeit the seat or whatever. So I went to a local notary, because you can go to like a notary, a judge, or whatever to, like, get sworn in. So I went to the notary and I swore in at the notary. And then I took my paper to go file it down at the borough office, and they tried to not even accept my paperwork. So I put it in the Dropbox, and then I was mayor after that. I served for like about 6 months. I think it was like a month after I got sworn in that I got the paperwork officially from the DA that he would be filing a quo warranto, which is like the term or whatever that they've used to remove an elected official. Sorry.
So you serve for 6 months, and I guess just to zero in on that, like were you able to get things done, or like what kinds of things were you able to do during those 6 months? Anything?
Well, they wanted to hire a cop, and we were able to avoid that because it was just going to be an unnecessary expense for the town. I guess within those 6 months, not a lot of things happened. It's like they were very good at putting things off until me and Andy were no longer there. They would just push it off to the next meeting, and then to the next meeting. Like, we'd never vote on anything, But if anything, I think that the greatest thing that we accomplished was making the people of this town realize the importance of local elections. Because like our meetings, they've always just been, oh, nobody from the town even goes, like it's just very closed. The building's really small. It's really not even like able to hold that like enough people to be open to the public. But it got people interested. It got people interested in running for office, running for school board, and they really realized the power, especially I think during COVID, people realized the power of, your local government when it came to like all the restrictions that were put in place and stuff like that. So, I mean, was like the greatest takeaway I think from us running, was just getting the ideas of like your local government is what is more important. It doesn't matter who the president is. It matters more who your mayor is and your borough council. Like, do you like what you pay in property taxes? That's getting determined at the local level. Things that really affect your daily life, like whether you're allowed to have chickens or not, or things like that.
No, yeah. The price of eggs these days, that's important. Seriously.
I know we have chickens in our backyard.
I wish I did. I think I'm allowed to have like 2 chickens where I live, but it's almost worth moving just to be able to have chickens. So I did want to read. I found the actual wording of the statute, and I'll just read it. So it says, "No person hereafter convicted of embezzlement of public monies, bribery, perjury, or other infamous crimes shall be eligible to the General Assembly or capable of holding any office of trust or profit in this Commonwealth." So it sounds to me, and I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds to me, so they mention, embezzlement, bribery, perjury, and other infamous crimes. You would think those crimes would be in line with the ones they just mentioned, not every single crime or every single felony. I don't know. Any additional thoughts on that now that I read that?
Well, yeah, and then that's the confusing part, because then when you look up infamous crimes, it's like all of those same crimes listed again. And and the other thing is, there is a mayor in Pennsylvania who has felonies, who is serving in office, and he's in like his second or third term. Yes. So that's like the biggest part to me. But because his case was never appealed, it was only determined at the local county court that he was still allowed to serve. It never changed the statute statewide. It's just in York County. So the mayor of York, Pennsylvania, has felonies, Michael Helfrich, and they ruled that, even though he has felonies, he's still allowed to serve.
Yeah, it's also interesting. So this is just in Pennsylvania. So at the federal level, I believe in Congress, you can be in Congress with a felony, and there's nothing to stop that. So somebody in Pennsylvania could run for Congress, get elected as a felon, and go serve in Washington which then they could make laws in Washington that would impact Pennsylvania, but it just doesn't make any sense at all. So where does the case stand right now?
Right now, we were supposed to have a hearing in Harrisburg on December 12th, because I am appealing this to the Supreme Court, but the DA filed a continuance, so I'm still waiting to hear back on when that new court date will be.
And while this is ongoing, you're not permitted to serve as mayor?
Nope. Because in the county judge, whenever he had his ruling, it removed me. And then the incumbent, the previous mayor, is the mayor now currently.
And they'll probably just keep pushing this off because that's crazy. So what's your plan? Obviously, you're trying to run this to the ground to appeal it. Say it comes back and you can't run for, they say you can't run for office. What would you do then?
Maybe I'll just run for Congress. No. But no, I think right now, the biggest thing going on is, we're on the verge of World War III. So, really getting the anti-war movement back, just bringing it back. I feel like there's this sentiment that's so pro-Ukraine that people aren't even they don't even think about what war really is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and plus this country's been at war, I think, my entire life. So people don't seem to grasp just how the devastation that war brings to people on both sides. It's not just these other countries, that we're destroying. It's the men and women that are being sent to those countries that the U.S. government is also destroying. And when they come home, they come home to a broken VA system that the care is bare minimum. Typically you have to drive, if you live in a rural area like this, it's, you're going to be driving several hours to even get to whatever VA hospital is nearby.
Which a lot of veterans do, right? It's very common for veterans to live in rural areas.
Exactly. And, I have been speaking with my son's VA rep, obviously because he's, a survivor, so he gets VA benefits and stuff. But his VA rep just informed me that Potter County is actually the highest per capita for veteran suicide. So that is obviously an issue that is near and dear to my heart. So I'm gonna, and my son's in Boy Scouts, so our Boy Scout troop goes through the VFW. So I'm just gonna start, I just want my focus to mainly be on that, whatever I can do locally, to help these veterans, because I know that the VA is severely lacking in that department.
It's a really frustrating thing, just speaking about the anti-war movement, where not long ago, maybe it is a long time ago, maybe I'm just getting old, but it doesn't feel like long ago when George W. Bush invaded Iraq and, the left came out very much against that and they were protesting in the street. But if you think back to that, at the time, even some of the mainstream media was more against the invasion at that time. Of course, as things went on and Obama became president, then it became acceptable. And it's hard to know how to really change people's minds on it because they're so brainwashed. We all saw what happened after COVID started to wind down. And people took out of their profiles, their little vaccine needles and replaced them with Ukrainian flags overnight. It was insanity. So what are some ways or ideas that you would have to reach people about, I think this is being anti-war, especially when we're on the potential brink of a nuclear war is the most important topic. So what are some ways you think people can broach that topic?
I definitely think it's a hard topic because the second you say you're anti-war, the first thing people think is that you're like against the veterans or against the troops, and it's like, no, like that's not what it is at all. Like, I being anti-war is the most like pro-vet, like, you know what I mean, pro-veteran stance I think you can take.
Yeah.
Because you know the suffering that they all go through, and you don't want more of that. Like, I think the best thing we can do is like stop making more veterans. But I know that the LP is putting together an anti-war protest. It will be in January. I think it's January 14th in Washington, D.C. So I plan to be out there for that. And I think that the Defend the Guard legislation is another great way that we can push this idea a little bit further and really explain things to people better. Like, I know Pennsylvania just sent over 500 guardsmen. They were just deployed overseas, and it's like like where did Congress declare war? Like, why are we sending?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the National Guard, right? Not the International Guard.
Exactly.
I mean, it's changing what it is, I guess, apparently.
The tree of liberty must be watered from time to time with the blood of tyrants. The official spirit of 1776, smooth, flavorful, Merlot. For any revolution, tyrants are losing their heads over this wine. Enjoy the taste of freedom. Drink the blood of tyrants.
Order today at bloodoftyrants.wine. Save 10% with the code LIONS.
Right. And I don't know how, I think people are like mostly like compassionate about our veterans. So being anti-war, I feel like that's just like, and it's a no-brainer to me. So it's hard for me to even like think, how do you explain this to others? But I know that the suicide rate is no longer at 22 a day. It's more like 44 a day. And that's not even with all the states. Like,
can't even like comprehend that. That is just, oh my God.
And like, not even all 50 states are even recording those numbers. So even when they had the 22 a day, it was like only because like 20 something states were actually, putting those numbers out. So since COVID, the numbers have just skyrocketed. And yeah, I just like, nuclear war is not good for anyone. Like, that should just be a no-brainer. Like,
yeah,
that's what we're looking at if we just continue down this path.
Yeah, and I mean, even aside from nuclear war, even just looking at the way that the U.S. has responded to this conflict by obviously, I mean, they've taken the Ukrainian side hard and sent billions of dollars over there, and then with sanctions against Russia, you're going to have people in Europe and maybe up in New England who, who knows, they might freeze to death. Hopefully they don't, but at the very least, their energy bills are going to be through the roof, because in this country we don't allow, we have blue governors who don't allow infrastructure and pipelines to be built that would pump oil and gas from states that are producing it up to areas that aren't. They'd rather buy it from Russia or have it shipped over from another source, or buy it from Venezuela. So it's just absolutely crazy, and it's hard for me to even imagine any of this changing because the media is so captured. And maybe I'm making a bigger deal of this than I should, but I see a little bit of hope with Twitter and with Elon taking over Twitter. Not that Elon is some freedom-loving individual who's going to save the world, but at least he's not like totally captured by this by the elites and the left who are who are just so laser focused on this Ukraine narrative that is that's bleeding people dry. So I don't know where I was going with that rant, but I felt like it was a good place to put it in. So I asked what your plans would be if you weren't able to proceed with mayor. If you do win, I mean, would you continue to, run for office again and continue down that path? Or what would be your plans that direction?
I think if we got a ruling in my favor, that I definitely would run for office again, and then do as much as I could, obviously, for my town, but while also reaching out in other like, I guess, like, using that to solve bigger issues as well, like outside of that. Because, like, if we, the ruling would open up, any state and local positions then. So, maybe down the line, I would want to run for county commissioner or something, a little bit more, and really just getting the ideas out and working with other people that are in office to address a lot of the issues. Because whenever, like, I just heard, like I said, with the Potter County having such high veteran suicide rates, that is, like, so alarming to me, because it's so rural out here. There's, like, not really much for people to do. Most people around here, it's like, oh, just go to the bar or something, like, and that's, like, the worst thing for, somebody suffering with any kind of depression, is, like, to go drink a depressant.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just want to motivate more people to run for office, really, like, that think like we do. I think too many people think, oh, you have to be some, like, polished politician that says all the right words, and it's like, I stumble over my words constantly, but people, I think, are craving real people to run for office nowadays more than anything, is they just want real people representing them.
Yeah, I think at the local level, yeah, we need natural leaders like yourself to step up and run for office in your local community. And I mean, I love, the initiatives with the Libertarian Party, especially in Pennsylvania. I know they've been very successful with just claiming empty positions that, they're running unopposed to get their foot in the door. I think that's great. I am curious. So you chose the Libertarian Party. Would you ever run for any position as a Liberty Republican, or do you have reasons why you would just stick with the Libertarian Party?
I think that's such a tough question. Because I mean, there is a guy local to me who is a Liberty Republican, and he runs Republican, and he's considered running Libertarian. I guess it just depends, because in my little town, I could run as a Libertarian and still be elected. I think too many times, though, we worry too much about that label next to our name while we're running, rather than, like, the change we would actually be able to accomplish. If we were elected, whether it was under a Republican or a Libertarian, as long as your principles are the same and, like, you're pushing the same kind of message, I don't know that I would want to be associated with Republicans, though, honestly, because I've just seen so much war hawkery, like, but, like, that's the big question, though. It's like, what's more important, like, getting into the positions, like, to actually make the change, or, running under this banner or that banner. So I don't know.
I think that's a very fair thing to say. Where, I mean, do you even want to be associated with the Republican Party? Because, I mean, the Republican Party has been responsible for some horrible things. Same with the Democrats, and Libertarian Party hasn't gotten that power. But I mean, yeah, there's libertarians, there's people in the Libertarian Party who I disagree with wholeheartly on certain things. There's libertarians who are, they're totally okay with, drag queen story hours and things like that, which I'm very much opposed to. So, I mean, that doesn't make me not a libertarian, though. But I don't know. I think as long as the goal, the intent it can't just be people say to advance liberty, like that has to mean something. Like, for example, your race for mayor, you won and you got elected and you were able to stop a police officer from being hired in your town. In my mind, that advanced liberty. Like, that's tangible. There's a metric there. You can look at it. You can look at the money saved. You can look at different, different factors there. That advanced liberty. But like a libertarian running a statewide Senate campaign who, maybe they get 0.5% of the vote and maybe they maintain their ballot access or whatever. But how are you measuring if you're advancing liberty with that campaign? I mean, you could point to maybe some volunteers you got, maybe some new people attracted to the party. But it's, do you understand what I'm kind of saying here? It's kind of hard to like build a movement when you're not like, you don't have success defined. Like, there's no, like, because most libertarians, they're not going to win that type of office at Congress or the Senate or even state Senate or state House. So it's, I don't know. It's hard to even figure out how you're going to achieve success if you don't know how to measure success. Thoughts on that?
Well, and then we can think back to like Ron Paul ran as a Republican. Would anyone say that he's not a libertarian?
Yeah.
But at the same time, where I don't know how we ever like. The only way we're going to break through, I should say, to that next level is by, getting elected at the local level and getting out there and showing our ideas. I think a lot of the times, maybe too many libertarians spread their ideas only on Twitter or social media, and they don't take the initiative to actually go out in their community and show people that those ideas work. An example I guess I could give is like we my husband is he was way better at this because he's super so anytime like people needed things in our community, like it didn't matter how small they were, we were very quick to give them a voluntary solution rather than like them saying like, oh well, the government better come in and do something about this, like anything small from like people's pipes being frozen or like water lines being broken in their yards. Like my husband would be out there digging up their yards and fixing their water lines, just like for free because they're allowed to go past a certain point. And this is a low income area, a very high elderly population as well. So these people that like their water would break or their pipes would be frozen in the middle of winter. He would go out and like fix these things for people. And then anytime we got a complaint, we would, like I have my Facebook group or whatever. Anytime someone would be complaining on there, we would just be like in the comments, like, well, someone would be complaining about junk in someone's yard or something, and it's like, well, why do they have junk? Maybe they're elderly and they can't move this stuff or, whatever it is. Like, and the amount of people in the community that jumped on board with this. And then anytime there was any kind of complaint, it was like, well, why don't we all get together and help them? Like those kind of ideas, they spread like wildfire. Like in the summer, as soon as we got cold patch for the roads, because everyone was complaining about the potholes, Andy was out there with like his truck and a shovel and like whatever, going out there filling the potholes himself rather than like having the borough employees do it. And then, but every time he would go out to do that, people would pull over and like help. They'd get out and help him. So then there'd be like 5 or 6 guys all out there patching the roads. Like no one's getting paid for this. They're just doing it to better the community, like they're already paying for the cold patch with their tax dollars basically. So like, it was just really nice to see like all of those kind of things just like happening all over town. Like fixing the bridge and stuff. He's a welder, so he's a jack of all trades, but like he fixed the bridge whenever it was broken and we didn't have to hire somebody to come out and do that. We didn't have to waste anyone's tax dollars to do that. And it was just really it was really nice. And then it just kind of, like I said, like created this ripple effect where people stopped saying like, well, the government better do something about that, and they just like
Yeah.
came together more as a community.
Now that's really cool. And, it really resonated with me. You were talking about, if people have junk accumulating in their yard, the reaction of a lot of people of authoritarians is, well, we gotta fine them. We gotta fine them so they clean that up. But, you're saying makes so much sense. A lot of these people, maybe they don't have a job. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they're elderly and they're not able to clear the junk. Finding them is going to do nothing. All that's going to do is add on to, what they're already dealing with and make their life worse. But yeah, if you can get your local community, your neighbors to come together to help someone out, lift them up, that's what it's all about. And, I think that's an area libertarians can really make an impact, because that is living out your values. I think that is the way forward, in my opinion.
I think
so.
Yeah.
So I did want to ask you, Kate. We've talked about a lot of stuff, and you don't have to answer this question because it's going to be open ended. But is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you were hoping to be able to talk about today, or is there anything that you just want to kind of reinforce before we end the interview?
I don't know. I guess just what we last touched on, that I just really want to see more libertarians getting active in their communities and showing people our ideas through our actions, rather than just hey, read Rothbard, or hey, go read economics in one lesson. You know what I mean? We've tried that approach for a long time. And I think the best way to get the liberty movement just up and off the ground is to go out and show people in real life that our ideas make the most sense. And you can do that in a million different ways. I know whenever I was in jail, there was all kinds of people volunteering to come in and really with their time, I guess. There's different ministries that do prison outreach and stuff. And I feel like there's just so many avenues that we could be reaching people, and really just I don't know, and just showing them that community is not in a communist way either, in a liberty way, where we're this is more important than the government having to come in and do it for us. I don't know, that I kind of just rambled and didn't make much sense.
Yeah,
but
no, I mean, and it's work. So it's a lot more work than sending a tweet. So it's more difficult to get people to do it. And I'm at fault for that too. Sure, I do a podcast, but I could do a lot more volunteering and a lot more stuff to actually be active in my community. And I plan on doing that going forward. But it's really a mindset change, and it's living out your values. And maybe it's time to stop being so critical of our neighbors, and understanding that we're not going to change their minds by throwing a 500-page Rothbard book out the window into their front lawn, rather by going and shaking their hand and helping them with something they're working on. So no, I think that's spot on, 100%. And before I let you go, Kate, if you want to share your social media handles, or maybe you don't want people reaching out to you, but if you want to, or any other thing you want to plug.
Yeah, I'm Mayor Kate on Twitter. That's about it though.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, and definitely keep us up to date on what happens with your fight taken to the Supreme Court, and hopefully you win. And if you do, honestly, I mean, you could change politics in this state forever. So that would be a pretty awesome legacy.
It'd definitely be awesome for some criminal justice reform in that aspect in PA. Give people a second chance.
All right, thanks, Kate.
Thanks.
All right. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that interview today with Mayor Kate. I think really what I've talked about a lot with libertarians, with people sympathetic to the ideas of liberty, people who are in favor of more freedom. I've talked a lot about getting involved locally if you want to be involved in politics. So rather than running for Congress or U.S. Senate under the LP banner, run for a local office, run for your school board, run for mayor like Kate did. You can do that as a Republican or as a libertarian, and get involved and change things locally where you know people in your community, and get out in your community and get to know people. I needed to do a much better job of doing that myself. So I think that is the way to change things. And obviously Kate talked about her situation where she's pretty much been forced out of being mayor because of the felony that is on her record. But even in the short time that she was mayor, she did make some actual tangible changes, but it was able to stop some things from occurring that would have occurred otherwise. So it's not that I'm against, people running for a governorship or a running for senator or running for president. I think there's a time and a place for things like that. And I think those are ways to sort of message and bring people into the movement in certain ways. Ways to grow the movement. But, I do think that a lot of people kind of blindly go into running on a Libertarian Party ticket without really thinking through what the cost benefit is, how they're even going to measure success for the massive investment of time and resources of other people who are helping them. How are they going to determine, what the value return was on that? It's almost impossible because we're not measuring those races in wins. You're not coming out victorious from one of those Libertarian Party campaigns, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But anyway, that's enough of a rant from me. I hope that you enjoyed today's show. I hope everyone is having an excellent beginning to the holiday season. I know that myself and my family, we are. We went out, we got our Christmas tree, put it up, decorated it, had an awesome time this weekend, and it's good. It's starting to feel like Christmas around here. So whether you celebrate Christmas or not, hopefully you have some time off and some time with family and friends and people you love to spend with here when we come up to the end of the new year. So, it's a couple weeks left in 2022. Hard to believe. I'm ready, though. I'm ready for 2023 and the challenges and the opportunities that will come with that. So I got a couple episodes of Finding Freedom left in the year, and I will see you all next week right here, same place, whether you're watching or listening through the Lions of Liberty Network feed or through the Finding Freedom solo feed. I appreciate it. Please, wherever you listen, please subscribe and share the show. With that being said, this is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.